In the music business, it's the business that keeps the music alive. Today, we're fortunate to have with us someone who is actually in the music business, Joel Sorensen. Welcome to Music Business Artistry. Thank you, Joel, for being with us here today. We're excited to find out all about what it is you do.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So, I understand you're an opera singer.
I am, yes, for almost 24 years now. Well, a little over 24 years now. So
24 years.
Yeah.
And what part do you sing?
I'm currently here with the San Francisco Opera. I'm singing Spoletta in Tosca, and he is the principal baritone's henchman, or second in command, as it were.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy, yeah.
Is it fun to play a bad guy?
It is, because you get to be bad. So yeah, it is. I enjoy the work a lot, and I like this piece very much, and it's a great production, so I'm enjoying it a lot.
Good. Yeah. So you've sung in many places in the past. What have you done?
Well, I started at the New York City Opera. I did 11 consecutive seasons there, 13 total. That was where I started professionally. I debuted at the Metropolitan Opera in 2000. I did, I think, 11 or seasons there.
That's very impressive, I gotta say.
It's a real.
That's like the pinnacle.
Yeah, and it's a fabulous place to sing, and it's as the colloquial, it's a rush to be on that stage. I had an appearance at the Chicago Lyric in Meistersinger. That was a lot of fun. Good. I debuted at the San Diego Opera in 1999, and I've had a long association with them, which has been really wonderful. And I debuted at the San Francisco Opera in 2004, and then came back and have been back consecutively since 2009, and have really enjoyed that collaboration, and it's just a great place to be. Very high production values and wonderful colleagues, and it's great. Yeah.
So is this something that you've always wanted to do?
I don't really remember making a conscious decision to be an opera singer. I do remember at one point I was watching Live from Lincoln Center with my family, and it was Der Rosenkavalier from the Metropolitan Opera. And when the curtain opened on Act 2, I remember saying to my parents, I want to be in that. But I don't remember what year that was. I don't remember how old I was. We as a family watched those broadcasts, and so I remember that. But I don't remember when it just seemed to be a kind of a natural progression. Yeah.
So you've sung with many companies. You've performed many roles. How many languages do you sing in?
I think I've sung in about 11 or 12. So I regularly sing in Italian and some in German, French, Russian. Sang in Czech here recently in Macropolis Case.
So how in the world do you learn to sing in Czech? You don't speak Czech.
No. I'm not a linguist in that sense. Do it a lot by phonetics, and the opera company has an excellent Czech diction coach. Okay. So you learn your text, and then you come in and you work with the diction coach. And whether it's Italian or French or German, even in English, there's usually a diction coach there who helps you to pronounce properly and clearly, so that everything is right and hopefully as native as possible. Yeah. So, no, I do not speak Czech. So I think that's a language you need to be born into to speak. There's some very difficult and interesting sounds there. So yeah.
Yeah, but with a great coach, you can learn to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what other languages? I interrupted you.
I've sung in Swedish and Danish, and dabbled in Finnish for a little bit. Didn't get to perform that. Hebrew, Latin, of course. And I think that might be it. not sure what I've said at this point. So
Right.
But,
So when you prepare for a role, do you normally know what the role is first and then prepare for it, or are these things that you, as an opera singer, just learn and then hope to get the job doing?
well, usually you are learning things that come your way. There are some roles that you try to learn in advance because they're just so large. I mean, I began working on portions of the Ring cycle well in advance of any contract because it's just such a vast score and there's so much text and music to learn that you try. But professional demands, sometimes you're just learning in advance of when you get the contract.
Okay.
And hopefully you have sufficient advance notice to really prepare. Some roles take a long time to not just to learn, to memorize, but to get into your body because they're two small muscles and you have to train them like any other muscle. So it's building the endurance and whatnot. So ideally one would learn roles well in advance of an offer to perform something, but it's hard to do that sometimes.
There's so many roles.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and in so many languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I enjoy listening to operas and not operas, just general music songs in various languages. But Italian is always so fun because of the vowels. They're so pure.
Yeah. Those long vowels and the double consonants. As a non-native speaker, one spends a lot of time learning to get those doubles correct and to elongate the vowels properly because it's the reverse of English. We enunciate and we express things by shortening vowels, and in Italian they do the opposite. They express certain emotions through elongating the vowel, and so it takes practice, and you that's why you have the diction coach and. San Francisco, Alessandra, she's great. She really works, listens very carefully and very gently helps you along the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, the very gently is very nice.
Yeah, so it helps, yes.
Yeah. So I've been surprised to hear you say Swedish and Finnish and what was the other, Danish?
Danish, yeah.
Yeah, I don't hear people singing those often.
Well, I was had an opera when I was in college. I was introduced to some of that repertoire by the opera coach there. His name was Alan Montgomery, and wonderful opera coach. And I was working on some Benjamin Britten with him, very complicated, and a brilliant pianist. And he sort of introduced me to some Tchaikovsky songs, so I started singing in Russian. And there was a student there who was a native Russian speaker, so she coached me, and then he introduced me to Sibelius, and so I did some Swedish things because a lot of his stuff was written in Swedish, and the Danish was for my sister's wedding, and I just decided on a lark that I'm going to sing in Danish. Danish last name, sing in Danish. So. Yeah. Yeah, but that was interesting.
So was that easy to learn?
No, actually, because Danish is. I think I read that there are 27 dialects in Copenhagen, the capital city, and so I got a couple of recordings off of Amazon, and I listened and listening very carefully to the vowels, and well, that vowel's a little different, and I think I was up to 8 native Danish speakers, and they all had slight variance in sound of this vowel or that vowel, and so I ultimately went with my favorite Swedish singer because it just was difficult. But like Czech, I think it's a language that you're best growing up into. There's a final soft D sound, which I went onto the internet to read about how to produce this sound, and it was interesting to read the different blogs because not even the native speakers could agree on how it was produced. So it was a challenge, but I think I did okay, and I've had a number of times to perform it after, and the saving grace is that no one necessarily speaks the language, so you're safe.
Here.
Here. So.
Here, a lot of people don't speak any language other than English. So, but it's nice to get it perfect. I know. Yeah. I know you want to get it perfect always. Yeah. So tell us, what is the life of an opera singer like?
It's very challenging. It can be very exciting. It can be sometimes a little nerve-wracking. I love what I do. It involves a lot of hard work. I don't want to get into cliches, but it does. And a real attention to detail, especially when you're singing in a foreign language that's not yours, because it involves translation, understanding what you're saying, what other people are saying. It's a pretty rigorous lifestyle. You're moving from one job to another. You're constantly on the move. You're away from family, which is difficult. I'm married. I have 3 children. I spend a lot of time away from them. That's hard. You're often you don't have necessarily social situations to have time to spend with a lot of people. The rehearsals can be strenuous, and sometimes not so. You know, I assume it's like a lot of other jobs. There are up days and down days, and short days and long days. And but I love what I do. It's very fulfilling, very gratifying, and I feel very fortunate to have had the career that I've had.
So one question that I know a lot of people have probably asked you: do you do your own makeup?
Oh, no. I learned to do it in college and graduate school. I think I did my own makeup maybe half a dozen times, and I have been very fortunate to work for companies that have a makeup staff to do that. And in fact, my confidence in my own abilities was so poor that I actually went to Gina at the San Francisco Opera, and she did my makeup for this appearance, because especially high definition versus, and I mean, it's an art like anything else.
And now even on stage at the opera with the screens that they have, quite often they're zooming in on you quite a bit.
Right. The HD is a little can be a little intimidating, because am I clean? Did I shave well? But I mean, there's a lot of skill involved, because that's a big theater at San Francisco, and to be doing makeup so that people in the balcony can see clearly, and yet to not be over made up for an HD transmission.
Right. It used to be the 30-foot rule. Right? It used to be you wanted makeup that looked good from at least 30 feet away. And so that quite often meant very red cheeks and very red lips and all that. And now you got to look good both ways. I don't know how to do it. Well, I have a lot of respect for the people who put the makeup on.
Right. And it's changed since I started. I mean, the makeup was heavier then. And I remember as a kid, when we watched the Live from Lincoln Center broadcasts, that it was heavier then. And if you look at the old photographs, you can really see the difference. And so I am more than happy to have someone else do that work. I'm happy to be the palette and let them be the artists that they are. So
I would like to have someone do my makeup all the time. That would be great. Just sit there and let them do it. Yes.
So.
Yeah, that'd be great. So what else about the daily life going on there? So when you go on stage, how often do you rehearse, do you think, before you do the role on stage?
Most times rehearsal processes are 3 to 4 weeks. Sometimes they're longer if it's a big, long piece with a lot of parts. But I'd say in the United States, a month is not atypical. 3 weeks of rehearsal and a week for performances. And we typically rehearse 6 days a week, depending on the schedule. If you're in a scene, then you're going to work that day, and if you're not, you might have some time off. But
so in the role of Spoleto, how many times a week do you get thrown across the stage?
Hopefully not that many.
Because that is part of that scene.
It is part of that scene, and I'm very grateful to my colleague for being gentle
as he throws you.
Letting he does a very fine job, and he lets me control most of that, so it's great. That's carefully choreographed, and hopefully doesn't look it when it happens.
And it looks Very good.
Yeah, it's my wife said, you know, that you've kind of made that your signature, and well, that wasn't really my intention, but it sort of has happened. I remember Pavarotti was doing an interview with Johnny Carson years and years ago, and he said in that interview that, you know, there are only so many high C's in a tenor's career, and I'm beginning to think that there are only so many pratfalls in a character tenor's career. So but. I don't know. We staged that, and they have a fight coordinator, Dave, who watched over, and he watches it, and he makes sure that hands aren't going where they should go, and that you're landing properly, because you don't want to get injured.
Get hurt.
Yeah, right.
Because you got to fall again the next time.
I got to, yeah, you know.
I mean, that's the most important thing, right?
You count them down. You know, final dress. Okay, I have 10 of these to do, and we have a fight call before that act to you know, walk through it again, make sure that it's right, and so yeah, it's an exciting. I try not to think about it too much. Yeah. So
it's exciting to watch, and it's fun to listen. So I wanted to ask you, how did you get started in this career? And I've got to say, when I first heard that you were from Canton, Ohio, I said, how did he become such a big opera star? Because I've been to Canton, Ohio, and I love it. I mean, my husband's from there, and so I've been there many times, and I love Canton, Ohio, but I think of it more of a football town. How did you get into opera from Canton?
Well, my father was a music teacher.
Okay.
And he taught vocal and instrumental music in Massillon, not west of Canton. And
I've gotten lost and accidentally gone to Massillon many, many times.
Yeah, my father was a brilliant musician. Probably genius. He played organ and piano. He played all the brass instruments. He played all the woodwinds, which is not atypical for a music educator. But he composed, he arranged. He taught in the schools, he taught privately, and he was a church musician on top of that. It was a very musical household. We were listening to music all the time. We were all expected to play instruments, so I was a trombonist, and in addition to singing. And my father recognized in me at a fairly early age, that would be my age, not his, that I had some natural ability, and so he began working with me. And I really don't recall a time when I wasn't singing. Because of his church work, I sang my first solo, I think, among a children's choir at 5 maybe. And then he played weddings, I sang at weddings. And my parents looked for opportunities for me to do things outside of school, because I did choir and band in school. And
that was at a time when there was a lot of music in the schools.
Yeah, music and art. I remember we had art on Friday and music, I think, on Tuesday, and that was a part of the standard curriculum at that time. And I guess not so much anymore. More's the pity.
It's in a lot of schools, they don't have it at all.
Yeah, which is a shame. But
I think it's a big shame.
Yeah.
I think it affects not just their musical ability later on, but many other aspects of life. I think one of the things that people keep mentioning is the self-discipline that's taught through music, and the ability to work with others. Right. In ensembles and various other things.
Right.
And I think these are skills that many of them you can find through sports, but many of them are unique to music and the arts.
And music has an intellectual pursuit that I think heightens a lot of that too. So my father, he worked with me, and Canton at that time, because of the industry that was there, was a pretty vibrant cultural town. We had the symphony and the civic opera, the ballet. The cultural center was a fairly large complex. I assume it's not as large as I remember it because I was small. Yeah. The art museum, and my parents took me to audition for A Mall in the Night Visitors, which the Canton Symphony did in conjunction with the civic opera every year for the schools. And one year I was selected, and there was a voice major at Akron University of Akron, who needed a performance credit, so they had her perform, but they let me understudy, and I think I might have done it the next year, but my voice changed. So yeah. But that's
the problem with voice.
Yeah,
it makes life difficult.
It is. But through the Cultural Center, they had a young artist competition, and so I was auditioning for that one year, and Richard Miller, very respected teacher from the Oberlin Conservatory, was one of the judges, and he invited me to come to Oberlin and then made it possible for me to attend Oberlin.
Good.
So I worked with him, and I worked with a student of his in graduate school at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. And then I graduated and I quit because I wasn't singing very well, I wasn't comfortable singing. And I had gotten married, I had a job at the Library of Congress, and I thought I was finished. And through a series of circumstances, I was introduced to my current teacher, John Fiorito, and I've worked with him since. And John pulled me out of the vocal scrap heap and assured me that I wasn't finished. And in about 14 months, I took second place in the regional finals of the Metropolitan Opera Competition,
Wow.
which led to an audition with the City Opera, and they offered me a contract on their national company tour in Butterfly, Madama Butterfly, and then a contract in their summer tour in Saratoga Springs in Magic Flute, and then a contract in the theater. And that was the beginning of the progression that we went through earlier. So
don't give up. Find the right teacher.
Find the right teacher. Well, that's paramount. I mean, I think that finding the right teacher in any discipline is important, but in singing, it's really paramount. And I think because if you're able to do something a month after you started that you couldn't do a month before you started, then you're probably okay. And if you're not able to do something a month after you started that you were able to do a month before you started, then you probably need to change.
Yeah, find a new teacher.
I wouldn't advocate teacher hopping, but because you have to give it time. And my work with John was difficult because I was I was such a mess at that point. My confidence was shot, and it took some time to build that up. And John was infinitely patient with me and very gracious, and he's was a wonderful teacher. And once we made that connection, it was wonderful. So, but I'm very grateful to him. And
so it's interesting that you mentioned the confidence building too, because you sing in front of thousands of people.
Yes.
Yes.
And and sometimes more. The San Francisco used to do opera in the ballpark, and I don't know how large the audience is there. And I did a Metropolitan Opera International HD broadcast, and I can't remember, but it was in the millions. They estimated. So that was one of those nerve-wracking days,
Yes.
because it's live and those cameras are rolling, and you want to make it right. So
you've mentioned to me prior to this show that your high school music teacher was a big influence on you.
Very much. My Lee J. Bowman, my high school band director, he taught me a great deal about the things that discipline, and working with others, and teamwork, esprit de corps, but just and a pride in the work, and not just when it was finished, but leading up to it. You want to do something that's going to be pleasing, that you're going to be pleased about when it's finished. But so he was a tremendous influence on my life. But there have been many people. I really believe that I'm the product of the influence of many people, and I hesitate to name anyone because then I'll forget somebody.
Because then you'll leave someone off the list. I know there's so many.
My first teacher.
But I had to mention your high school one because you've mentioned him.
Yeah,
several times.
And I know many people who had him as a teacher. That
it all starts from there and then continues on.
Yeah. He was a tremendous influence. My first voice teacher was Jean Blair. She was at the University of Akron. I worked with her on a scholarship that I won from the Canton Civic Opera, so that was tremendous. Richard Miller, of course. Alan Montgomery, I mentioned. William W. McIver at the University.
And are many of these people still working and still in the business?
Well, Richard's passed away. Dr. McIver's passed away. Charles Lynham, I worked for him as a semester in Greensboro. He's passed away.
You're the next generation. So are you passing this on? Are you giving master classes?
I've begun to give master classes.
Okay,
and,
excellent.
I kind of held off teaching for a long time because, the professional demands to have a studio and to be gone 6 or 8 months of the year, that's not
Right.
fair to the student, and especially beginning students, they really need that consistent instruction. I
Yes.
did. But a few years ago, I was in San Diego, and they asked me to do a master class at one of the schools, and I really enjoyed it. I found that it was enjoyable, and I've had some friends who've had me do some, and I seem to have a knack. And
Good.
it's important, I think, to pass on what you know, and because I wouldn't be where I am without those who had contributed to my singing. So I think you absolutely have to pass it
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice, now of course anybody who really wants to learn needs to take the master class or needs to get with a regular teacher. But is there one piece of advice that you wished people knew before they got to your class, so then you could teach them the next level? What would you like them to know before?
Well, boy, that's hard, because I think teaching is paramount. Finding a good teacher, that's the first step. I think that, especially in our day and age, because popular music is so pervasive in our culture, and the classical arts are not as prevalent as they used to be, I think it's important to really get that sense, that sound in your ear, in one's ear.
Right.
So it's listening to the recordings of the past, and
Right.
to really get a sense for that sound, that classical sound.
And a lot of people say they can't afford opera, but the recordings are free. I mean, a lot of them are free
At the
online.
library,
Yeah.
and really
On the
the
radio
cost
and
has come down considerably. But I think it's important to have a real aural connection to what you aspire to do. And I would say it's the same is true of a visual art.
Right.
I remember watching ballet with my wife. She wanted to be a dancer, and watching ballet on video. And so I think it's really getting a solid introduction to
Yes.
that.
Now, see, I thought you were just going to say, don't scoop.
Oh, don't scoop your pitches. Well, there is that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are certain opera is classical singing is different from popular singing, and it's really having that connection.
And yes, and that's something that we have to all learn, is that different styles take different types of singing, different techniques, and we need to learn those.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I've been very happy that you've been able to come on today. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again when you're back in San Francisco singing.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
hope to.
you.
Yes.
That's great.